Lewis Hamilton and Esteban Ocon have been in a really similar situation over the course of the last 12 months, but for really different reasons really. Now, Esteban Ocon and Lewis Hamilton both have chosen to leave their teams this season, with Esteban Ocon joining Haas for 2025 and Lewis Hamilton joining Ferrari. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that progresses for both drivers, but both drivers have been subject to disinformation really from the media when it comes to their performances on race weekends and things like that, and it all comes from teams not wanting drivers who are leaving to be performing to that higher standard than their counterpart teammate. And we've seen it this season with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, as well as Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, the only people who really haven't seemed to have done that. And obviously not every team does this. Not every team is looking to destroy the confidence of their second driver, who ultimately was probably their first driver up until they decided to leave. But it's something which I wanted to discuss on the channel. Esteban Ocon has been given a lot of stick over the course of the last few years for his crashes with teammates, his incidents that he's had in races, and ultimately I think Esteban Ocon is one of the best drivers on the grid. I think ultimately he's very unlucky really that he never really got an opportunity at a top team. But we'll see him move to Haas this winter, and heading into 2025, I think Haas are going to be looking really, really good as we head towards the final year of the regulations. And it's going to be interesting to see how the likes of Esteban Ocon and Lewis Hamilton settle into their new teams. Obviously, both drivers, I think Ocon is more accustomed to being able to make this move, and Lewis Hamilton, it's going to be a real big change for him. Obviously, spending the past 20 odd years as a Mercedes partnered driver, which is massive for him, and now he's moving to Ferrari. Esteban Ocon, a Ferrari powered Haas, and it's going to be interesting to see how it does develop for those two drivers and if they can really put an end to all these conversations. Because for me, the big thing that's going to change everybody's opinion on this is if Lewis Hamilton comes out and outperforms a Charles Leclerc over the course of either 25, 26 or 27, we can all turn around and say, well, we know what's happening at Mercedes. Esteban Ocon can say the same about Pierre Gasly. And I think what a lot of the normal media, like Sky Sports F1, Autosport and things like that, what they forget is that these cars are so complex. A screw not done properly can completely change the dynamic of the car, the characteristics. And obviously we've seen with Lewis Hamilton this season that suspension wasn't built properly. There was engine components not correctly fitted and things like that, which obviously give you a downturn in performance. You obviously got them then testing parts for the team on setups which they probably don't really want. And I think the similar thing was happening with Esteban Ocon, but Esteban Ocon then wasn't getting the upgrades, wasn't getting the updates where he was in line with Pierre Gasly. And I think it just shows a lot of how Alpine have turned since the likes of Ocon'S and Daphne have moved on and things like that. And I think when you talk about these two drivers, I'm not saying Esteban Ocon at any point is on the same level as Lewis Hamilton, but I certainly think he has a lot of ability. And I think this upcoming season is going to be massive for the likes of Lewis Hamilton, Esteban Ocon, Nico Hülkenberg, and even a George Russell and a Max Verstappen, who are all coming up against younger teammates who realistically, in obviously Charles Leclerc isn't in an early season, but it's a massive season for Lewis in the context of being able to twist that narrative that has come up from Formula One over the course of the last 12 months because of what Mercedes have done to him. And Esteban Ocon has that same battle with his journey to Haas. And you look at an Ollie Bearman stepping up, Gabby Bortoleto, Kimi Antonelli, Liam Lawson, all stepping up to the main teams. Isaac Hadjar as well, stepping up to Racing Bulls. And they've all got a point to prove as essentially rookie drivers in their first full seasons. And what we're going to see this season is essentially a battle of the generations. You've got Kimi Antonelli, who is the new generation, versus the middle generation in George Russell. You've got Isaac Hadjar, who's the new generation, against the middle generation with Yuki Tsunoda. You've got Lewis Hamilton, the oldest generation, versus a Charles Leclerc of that mid-ground generation. And it's going to be very interesting to see how it all develops. And for me, a big talking point over the course of the next 12 months is going to be Yuki Tsunoda and Aston Martin. With that Honda partnership coming in for Aston Martin, is Yuki Tsunoda going to make that move? And I think this is another season where we're potentially going to see those situations where drivers aren't really given the full opportunity to compete against their teammate at minimum. And I think what we're going to see next season is the likes of George Russell having to take over from Lewis Hamilton and that development role that he's taken on over the course of the last few years. Now George Russell is that lead driver. And I think there's a potential that we may see Kimi Antonelli beat him. You look at Pierre Gasly, he's going to have to take that development role at Alpine instead of a Jack Doohan. Now, there is obviously talk that Jack Doohan may not even make his Formula 1 season proper debut in 2025. It may be Franco Colapinto, which is something we discussed on this channel earlier on a few months ago when it first got reported that Alpine and Red Bull were interested in Colapinto. And it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. Now, Lewis Hamilton and Esteban Ocon, massive opportunities for them. And I think they're going to show exactly why they made the decision to leave their situation. Now, Lewis Hamilton, in my opinion, it got to a point where he's being disrespected by Mercedes, and whether that be the higher ups, Toto Wolff, George Russell, Peter Bonington, I don't think any of them are away from blame. I think his own team as well, his mechanics and things like that were part of the problem as well. But it's one of those where Lewis Hamilton has got millions in the bank. He's got a £400-500 million deal with Ferrari. Obviously, I know not all of that will go direct to him, but there's certainly that situation where Lewis Hamilton has less to lose, really, than those guys who are on fairly decent wages, but obviously not mega wages, and obviously living the dream of following around Formula 1, building cars for the likes of Lewis Hamilton and things like that. And obviously those people have to keep their jobs, and they can't not do what their counterparts above them tell them to do. And I think that's what we've seen really since Silverstone and Spa. And whether that's the same with Esteban Ocon, I personally believe it is, and I'm actually really disappointed in Formula 1 and Alpine for not having Esteban Ocon in the end of season photos, because for me, Jack Doohan raced one race, and it wasn't Doohan's team, it was Ocon's team, and I felt really bad for Ocon and his staff because they never really got to discuss or really have a proper goodbye, a proper send-off in Formula 1. And a lot of people are going to talk about the likes of Bottas, the likes of Magnussen and Guan Yu Zhou, who are coming off the grid, and how they didn't get the same opportunity Lewis Hamilton did to get a parking spot on the main grid. But obviously Lewis Hamilton isn't leaving the sport, but it's the biggest, longest partnership in Formula history of 20 odd years. It's the most successful partnership in history. 7 championships, 8 Constructors titles, 106 wins, and it's an unbelievable feat that Lewis Hamilton achieved. That's why it was such a massive moment and why it had to be celebrated in Abu Dhabi. And that's something which a lot of people were really annoyed about, really. But obviously, for me, there's absolutely nothing to be annoyed about. Esteban Ocon didn't get a send-off at all. Ricciardo didn't get a send-off. Logan Sargent didn't get a send-off. What makes the likes of Bottas, Magnussen, Guan Yu Zhou special over them drivers? And that's just my personal opinion. Now, it's going to be massive to see what happens over the course of the next few years. Obviously, with the likes of Lewis Hamilton now at Ferrari, with Charles Leclerc, Esteban Ocon at Haas. Is Ollie Bearman going to be able to show that he is Ferrari material? Is he going to be able to get in that scarlet red car in the long-term future? Let me know your thoughts down below. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Formula 1 content coming to the channel. If you have not already, check out my Christmas video from this morning. I just want to hear what you guys have to say about sort of things coming to the channel over the course of the next few weeks, maybe months, years, whatever. And let me know what sort of things you want to see, and I'll catch you in the next video.